Okay, so I had some patients ask me to describe and explain how a brain out of sync can cause issues like anxiety and depression and self-image problems. So we're going to try and do my best here to explain how that can happen, and better yet, how we can do some things to avoid that from happening and possibly treat it, and treat it without having to use medications. So just as a review, this is a side view of your brain. This is the front, this is the back. Kind of rotate it through here so you can see different areas of the brain here. And the parts we're going to be paying especially close attention to is an area of the brain called the limbic system. Limbic system is where your emotional centers are found. And then the other part we'll be looking at is something called the prefrontal cortex. And this is the executive decision-making part of your brain. It kind of oversees and controls all the rest of the brain through different neurological pathways. So what we want to pay attention to again is an area called the limbic system. So the limbic system has your emotional centers, and our brain though is divided into a left and a right side. And it's called lateralization. It's what allows our brains to do all the fun, cool human things that we can do, and kind of separates itself from other animals. So in this case, the left side of our limbic system contains emotions such as happy, anger, and surprise. And these are considered to be approach types of behaviors. And then on the right side of the limbic system are anxiety, depression, and disgust. They are more of the avoidance types of behaviors. And when we talk about disgust, we're talking about either self-disgust with yourself or with having disgust or issues with other people. And so we need to have these emotions take place. So if we don't ever experience anxiety or depression or disgust, we can never use that for future reference for other events and be able to tag that emotionally as whether we find that it causes us anxiety, does it make us happy, does it make us angry. Those things are all necessary in order for us to have a full-fledged emotional response and throughout our lives. But the challenge being is that the prefrontal cortex, which is these areas up here, one of their main jobs is to inhibit or to control excessive output or expression from these limbic systems. However, if one of the prefrontal cortical areas is not working as well as it should be, or fatigues, then the area that it's supposed to be inhibiting is not inhibited anymore. And so now these emotions would have an easier capacity to escape and over-exaggerate themselves, because this area of the prefrontal cortex isn't inhibiting or controlling them like it's supposed to be. So we want to look at how can we end up helping our prefrontal cortex. Well, the thing that basically fires up our prefrontal cortex the most is obviously stimulation from the environment is what keeps our brains healthy. The majority of the inflammation, or the biggest feedback we get to our brain comes from an area called the cerebellum. Now, the cerebellum is responsible for things such as muscle coordination, balance, eye movement. It controls all your postural muscles, and this is important because the biggest feedback to your brain comes from your postural muscles, because your postural muscles are always sending feedback because they're always being affected by gravity. And so now gravity, being that it's the number one feedback to your system, you can have these postural muscles be holding a certain position, but the more that you move your spine and move your body, then the feedback increases, because these muscles have to keep responding and adapting to their change in relationship to gravity. Well, all this stuff then causes your cerebellum to fire information over into that prefrontal cortex. And as the prefrontal cortex becomes activated, it can do a better job of inhibiting these emotions. So one of the best things that we can do is to be able to get up and move, but move in ways that change your body positioning. So not saying that walking and running and those things are not good for you, but as you get into a pattern of rhythm, the feedback you get from your spine at that point is not as great as it could be, as if you were modifying or changing your movements. So moving up, down, sideways, back and forth, jumping and rolling and doing all these different activities is an awesome way to activate that prefrontal cortex in order to get the inhibition needed to control the expression of these emotions. One of the best ways you can do this, another great way is through vibration. This is how basically NASA astronauts were able to stay up in outer space for long periods of time, because they would stand on vibrating plates, and that would stimulate their muscles, which would then keep their brains healthy. So not that everybody has to get a vibrating plate, but that is one of the better ways and best ways to do it. Another one that's probably one of the better ways to work on it is, we think that, okay, well, the faster we move, the better, but not necessarily, because if we start moving quickly, we can adapt ourselves, or we can compensate for the fact that our spines aren't stable. And so one really great way to activate these postural muscles is through very slow movements. So things such as Tai Chi and Qigong and Pilates and these types of exercise movements where you're moving slowly and controlled, those are awesome exercises to help keep more stimulation coming from your spine. There's also a group of exercises called Tabata. That's spelled T-A-B-A-T-A. Was a researcher that found that by doing short bursts of exercises in multiple directions, increase the metabolic capacity or the metabolic speed of a person, but at the same time, it actually helped get your brains to be healthier as well. So that's another avenue or aspect that you can look into. Now there's other nutritional things we can look at as well, but just from a simple environmental thing that you can do, movement is key. If you sit for long periods of time, it's very harmful for your brain, because your brain will start to degenerate faster than it should, because we're not getting the feedback that it needs in order to keep it healthy. If you have any questions, feel free to return this. Email me at my email is Dr. Rudolph DC. That's DRRUDOLPHDC @yahoo.com, and I will do my best to answer any questions that you might have.